I smoked my first cigarette when I was 7 years old. I got extremely drunk for the first time when I was 8 years old, and I smoked marijuana for my first time when I was 10 years old. You see, I grew up without a father, and I didn't really have very much mentorship in my life or much direction or really like strong, good influences that is trying to steer me in the direction that would lend to anything really productive of real good. I was in and out of jail as a teenager, and when I got into high school, I started to attend some college parties because I got hooked up with the wrong crowd, and it was kind of challenging. And so in that process, I started to meet other people who were going down a totally different route that was not bringing me joy, peace, and I hit rock bottom. And today I'm going to share with you my story about going from drug dealer to a gospel soldier. But first, my name is Enoch Leffingwell, and here at the Army of Youth, we are extremely passionate about helping young people identify their unique talents and to dedicate them to the Lord's service. So as my story goes, I think it went back a little bit further. See, when I was about 10 years old, I was walking in the grocery store and I noticed that there were some candy bars there and they were 50 cents. And something came in my mind. I'm like, wait a second, what if I bought a bunch of candy bars and for 50 cents and sold them for $1? And I was like, okay. So I went off and I started going door to door, and I was selling candy bars. And when I was 10 years old, I was making $20 an hour. And as long as I would be out there knocking on doors, pounding the pavement, I was making $20. As before I was even a teenager, I had hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And then when I went into middle school, I started to I understood a little bit of supply and demand. And in middle school, I was like, okay, what is the need here? Well, there's a bunch of students who just got out of grade school and they could not chew gum in grade school, but now they're here. They can chew gum, but they can't go off campus to go buy it at the store a block away. So I thought, well, if I could bring the need and supply the need over here, then hey, maybe I could have something else to sell. So I found that as many packs of gum that I could pack in my pockets, that's how many I would sell that day at school. And it was probably about $97 a week. I made thousands of dollars when I was 12 years old, and maybe about 1,000 when I was 13. And in that process, I began to understand a little bit about supply and demand. And I learned through that I could actually sell more by giving some to my friends. I'd buy them for 14 cents, sell them for $1, and then I'd give them to my friends. Like, you go down that hallway, you go down that hallway, and then I'll go down the center, and we will meet up, and then I'll give you some percentage. And so that worked out, and I was able to expand that gum selling business. And then when I got into high school, I got there and I was trying to sell gum, but I realized nobody wanted my gum. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, I could just go to the store. And then they would leave for lunch and then go drive off. And I was scratching my head. I'm like, okay, I got to reevaluate. We're in this new zone. It's like, what do people want? What do people need? And I see, like, why aren't they buying my gum? It's because everyone has cars. So everybody has vehicles, and they're now wanting to buy it, and they're getting their driver's license, their permits, and they're wanting to do this for the first time. So when I was 14, I started to buy and sell vehicles, and I started learning about putting people on payment plans, and it was a passion of mine. It's something I enjoyed. And then, and that was before I even had a driver's permit, but it was something that I was just interested in. But then when I was 15, like I said, I started getting around some people that were just not a good influence. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. And my manners were quickly being eroded as they started to introduce me to more marijuana, more alcohol, more parties. And I started to realize with my entrepreneurial mindset that there's an opportunity here. So I started hanging out with friends that would they were growing marijuana. They would send it off. Where I grew up, it was legal in my state, and it's becoming more legal all throughout America. But at the time, it wasn't. So my friends would drive over the mountain pass where you could sell for tens of thousands of dollars a load, and with your trunk just filled with it. And so I was going down that path, and with my entrepreneurial mind, I was like, hey, that seems a lot better than going over to college or university or something. And I started just going down the wrong path. And it was while I was at a party where I was drunk and high, and I had hit rock bottom. I was so depressed. I've never been so low in my life, and I just wanted to die. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is the worst ever. When was I the happiest? And instantly, it's like the thought came to my mind, I was the happiest when I was on fire for Christ. And I'm like, wait, what? You mean to tell me I had the most joy, the most peace, and the most happiness when I was on fire for Christ? That is the weirdest thing, because I'm the furthest thing from that as the East is from the West. That is the last thing that is on my mind in my lifestyle. So I started thinking about that, and I remember, it's like, well, I always hear that God is a God of love, and I figure, like, if God really, really loves us, then I couldn't imagine a loving God to create us to live in such a miserable experience as I was in just constant tormented. I was hanging out with friends that their one pursuit in life is to get like this perma-fry. Like they just wanted to smoke and smoke and smoke until they would permanently fry their mind so that they could always be in a state of being high, because they wanted to drown out the world, and they just didn't want to deal with it. And that's who I was around constantly. And so that life is not worth living, friends. An aimless life is a living death. And that was my experience. So I thought, I'm like, well, if I had it once and it was gone, then I want that again. And then the problem probably wasn't with God, if he really is loving. The problem was probably with me, something I did that did not stick, like did not allow that relationship to stick. So I started searching after God. I'm like, God, what must I do to have a relationship with you? And God brought me to this youth camp, where this youth ministry, they would gather all of these foster care children. Like I was in and out of foster care growing up. So this camp for misfits and foster kids, and there's this older gentleman who was just beaming with the love of Christ. And he was like, friends, my young friends, God has a plan for your life. And if you follow God's plan, he will do some incredible things in your life, things that you couldn't even imagine. And if you are willing to give your heart to Christ today, he will accept you just as you are, and he will take you on a journey that will transform your life and be everything that you would hope for. And I was like, whoa. In that moment, that man spoke faith into me. He spoke hope into my life, and I learned that there was hope for the hopeless. And in that moment, I was inspired, like, I want that. I need that. And that night, I was praying at this youth camp, and I was saying, God, I cried so earnestly to God. I was like, Lord, what must I do to have a relationship with you? And he told me two things. And I realized by the very nature of my question, if I didn't do these two things, what must I do to have a relationship with you? I may never have a relationship with God again. And the answer was not what I was expecting, but he said two things. One, I gotta quit playing video games, and two, I got to change my friends. And I was like, ugh. Because the thing is, I wasn't really close with my family. I didn't feel very connected. Like, my friends were my family. My friends was the closest thing that I had to people who I could trust or be comfortable with, or who knew me, and who, it's like that sense of human connection. But God's like, your friends, yeah, those, give me them. I want that. Are you willing to sacrifice these relationships so you can have a relationship with me? And I realized, like, my friends were leading me down the wrong path. If it were not for this pivotal moment, then I likely would have been gone down that path of being a drug dealer. And honestly, a lot of my friends in high school are either in prison, in jail, or dead, or OD'd. There's a lot of them aren't really around. And in that decision, it was very heavy for me. And I decided, you know what, I have nothing to lose and possibly eternal life to gain. So I decided to jump full in. And when I gave my heart to Christ, I was 16 years old, and I had stopped selling everything entirely. And what I started to do is God was able to redeem those skills, and and use them for his service. So then I was able to start selling ideas, not for monetary value, but to basically the principle of persuasion, where those skills that I use in selling gum and candy and drugs, I was able to teach and explain and to help others to understand the Word of God and the things that I was learning. And I just had a drive and a joy and a passion I wanted to share with everybody. And in that, there was a moment where I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be hanging out with these people, who do I hang out with? What do I do? And I felt very lonely. And I didn't know who to be around or who could encourage me. And I listened to a service by this preacher, and he was saying, young friends, Daniel understood the importance of having true, godly Christian friends. Young people, if you want good Christian friends, join ministry. And I just remember that phrase was just resonating and resounding in my ears. I was like, join ministry. I want young friends. I was like, okay, Lord, here I am. Send me. I'm ready to enlist in the Army of Youth. I'm ready to enlist in your service. And this Army of Youth was not in existence at that time, but I'm like, Lord, I want to find these youth. Where are they? And I realized after 8 years of being in full-time ministry that some of the closest friends I've ever had, I've met in ministry, in active service for Lord. I know where all the young people are that are on fire for Christ. They're in the service of Christ. They're dedicating their talents to Christ's service, and they're living a life of joy and fulfillment. You see, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 11, it gives the secret of overcoming that so many Christians miss. So many people like me who tried to give their hearts to Christ, who tried to give everything to Jesus, but it didn't work out, and I didn't understand why. Revelation 12:11 says, they overcame Satan, sin, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. The secret of overcoming is by helping others overcome. It is the joy of service. It is by helping others come to Christ that you are drawn closer to Christ than ever before. But the reason why so many people find that the Christian life so deplorably difficult is because they're trying to reach out to Christ with one hand while clinging on to their cherished idols and sins in the other. Some of you right now, God may be pointing out there are some friends who are leading you astray. It might be in a relationship. It might be a friend, a visitor. It might be a family member. I had close family that every time I get around them, I'd get in so much trouble. And God might be telling you that you need to change your circle of influence. You need to change your friends and surround yourself with people that are going in the same direction that God is calling you to do. And friends, I want to be a similar voice as that man was to me and let you know that God has a plan for you. If you fully dedicate your life to Christ's service, if you give him your heart unreservedly, don't just tiptoe in. If I tiptoed in, I wouldn't have been able to experience it. I had to cannonball in to the water of life, the river of life, and to experience that joy. And I found the secret of what keeps me out of trouble until this day is ministry. Ministry is my saving grace through Christ and relying on him. If it was not for the opportunity to serve, I would be in some serious trouble. I'd be caught up with my issues, my challenges, my problems. I'd be just going back and forth, in and out of all these things that I'm naturally inclined to. But it is through service to others, being active in using my talents for Christ, that is helping me to find victory and draw closer to Christ. And God may be calling you, dear friends. In 2 Timothy 2:3, Paul says to Timothy, "Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier for Jesus Christ." If God is calling you to be a gospel soldier for Jesus, if God is able to give hope to this hopeless soul, where he has brought me from being a drug dealer to a gospel soldier, then I believe that he can do anything through you if you surrender yourself and your lives and your talents to Christ today. And if you're interested in getting involved and surrounding yourself with the fellowship and the support and the friends that are going in a similar direction, if you want to use your talents for Christ's service, I encourage you to join us in the Army of Youth, where we have been putting together these squads. We have online group Bible studies where you can get your questions answered, where you can contribute your gifts to the cause of Christ. Many people who have never given a Bible study in their life, they're following our simple model of discipling, and they are learning how to do this. They're being equipped with the mentorship that they are looking for and that they've been desiring for all these years. And we're being surrounded by people who are on fire for Jesus and want to serve him with all their hearts. If that is you, friends, I encourage you to join us for our weekly Bible studies. They're only an hour a week. And if you're interested, you can go to thearmyofyouth.com/squads. That's again, thearmyofyouth.com/squads. And you can join us for a weekly Bible studies. You can take part in the service of Christ and find this joy unspeakable and have a deeper relationship with God than you ever thought possible. Thank you so much for watching, friends. I encourage you, if you like this message, hit like, share this with someone else. Who do you know that could be encouraged by a testimony of God's deliverance? Who do you know that enjoys seeing how God is transforming people's lives? And share this with them. Let them know. And I'd love to hear in the comments below, what is it that stood out to you in this message? I love to hear from you. And remember that God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.